About Johnny Mercer, who was resigned slash sacked. I don't know which one it was. He's saying he was sacked by text, which shows you how much of a coward Boris Johnson is. Kind of reminds me of Donald Trump in a lot of ways, where he would like sack people by Twitter because it sounds like he couldn't actually look them in the eye. Um, but this Johnny Mercer guy. Let's not get it twisted now. Johnny Mercer is not a good human being. He's a scumbag. He's a scumbag. I've read some of his comments about Afghanistan where he said, you shouldn't leave, we should stay there, and how the Taliban are a threat to the UK. Like, all right, big man, calm down because you're full of lies. Um, he's one of those guys where it's like you never leave, and I'm thinking like, mate, like there is a time like we've been there for I think it's like 18 years or something. Like if the Afghan forces are not ready to defend their country right now, they will never be ready. They will never be ready. Anyways, so this whole thing, there are bits where he talks about sort of Irish history and amnesty, etc., where look, I don't have the knowledge to talk about certain things, so I'm going to do my best to try and avoid certain topics as best I can. So I hope people can understand that. But let's get into the video. So, Tory MP Johnny Mercer says he was forced to resign as Defence Minister over the treatment of veterans who served in Northern Ireland. So, Number 10 confirmed his exit on Tuesday. This is about some sort of law that protects soldiers overseas from prosecutions after 5 years. So, after 5 years, they will not be prosecuted, which is ridiculously short because the Iraq War was on for a long time. We're just pulling out of Afghanistan now. So say if a soldier was committed a war crime, 4 or 5 years, say 5 years ago, by the time things come to light and there's an investigation, that they've already gone through the statute of limitations. So it's just ridiculous. So the new law is designed to protect veterans from unfounded prosecution. How do you define an unfounded prosecution? But British soldiers who served in Northern Ireland will be excluded from the bill, which is quite strange. Mercer called it a red line. So, money for their mates, not a red line. Over 100,000 COVID deaths, not a red line. But this is the red line for him. In response, Bojo said that the government was committed to doing more over the coming months, including for those who served in Northern Ireland, which is a lie. Johnny Mercer says that there was nothing put to paper, and so this will not happen. Most likely that for whatever reason the government will not make this decision. A Number 10 spokesperson said Boris Johnson had accepted Mr. Mercer's resignation and thanked him for his service as a minister. But posting a resignation letter on Tuesday, immediately afterwards, Mr. Mercer said he had been relieved of his responsibilities in government, which means that he was sacked. He was sacked. So the MP, former army captain, wrote that the government abandoned. Oh, I forgot to mention he did call these guys the biggest bunch of liars and stuff like that. So once we get to that article, we'll talk about that. But I feel like that's an important thing to mention just in case people can't make it to the end. So basically he wrote that the government had abandoned people in a way that he simply could not reconcile in allowing endless investigations into historic killings to continue. Veterans are being sectioned, drinking themselves to death and dying well before their time simply because the UK government cannot find the moral strength or courage we asked for them to in bringing peace to Northern Ireland, in finding a political solution to stopping these appalling justices. But if these people, like, it should not have taken this long for these sorts of investigations to have happened. They should have happened immediately after the Good Friday Agreement. So the fact that they're happening now is very strange. But if they've committed any sorts of war crimes or murders or whatever, they should have been punished. And the fact that it's dragging on so long is crazy. But you read about people who committed crimes in World War II still being punished. So, this argument that, look, we should give them some sort of amnesty, British soldiers amnesty, if they're accused of doing some sort of war crime, absolutely they should still be punished. Like, just because you've gotten old now doesn't mean you have some sort of exemption from your past actions. This is ridiculous. But at the same time, if these are unfounded accusations, they should be, dealt with very quickly. The fact that these cases have been dragged out for so long is insane. Plans were announced last year by the government to restrict the number of Troubles killings which could be fully investigated under a new approach where new compelling evidence would be required, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but how is this stuff dragging on for this long? I don't understand. But the Overseas Operations Bill, which is the thing that Mercer has a problem with, would go further for other veterans, such as those who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, proposing a 5-year limit on prosecution. So, maybe it's because, black and brown people were killed, bloody foreigners were killed, that, the rules are different. It's very strange. 6 former soldiers who served in Northern Ireland during the Troubles are currently facing prosecution. So is it that they found new evidence against these 6 people, or the cases are just dragging on, or these are just unfounded accusations? It's very unclear which ones they are. But this is scary stuff here. If there is evidence of them committing war crimes, then yes, they should be taken to trial regardless of their age. It's stupid not to. You can't forgive people who've committed war crimes and murders. What kind of country does that make you if you do that? In 2019, the Public Prosecution Service in Northern Ireland said of 32 legacy cases it had ruled on since 2012, 17 related to Republicans, 8 to Loyalists, and 5 were connected to the army. So, it's not, the majority of them are Republicans who potentially have committed war crimes. Should those people be let off as well? Should we let them go? Should we let the 8 Loyalists go as well? What would Johnny Mercer say about that? Mercer said no discernible efforts have been made to introduce similar legislation to cover Northern Ireland veterans, despite previous pledges, adding, "I can see no prospect of this changing." So, there's more protection in place for the veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan, which again I find very strange that the government have taken this approach. The Tory MP said he was deeply proud of his predecessors who served in Northern Ireland. Are you proud of all of them? The ones that may have committed war crimes, are you proud of them as well? I mean, they were not second-class veterans and deserve the protection of the Overseas Bill like everyone else. I mean, the time limit is stupid because some of this stuff takes a long time to come out. But if it's the case that, look, the agreement was signed in 1998, the Good Friday Agreement. So I think the trouble started in the 70s. I could be wrong on that, but the fact that it's taken this long for anything to come out of these investigations, it's just ridiculously slow. Like, surely once the Good Friday Agreement's signed, you throw a lot of money into these investigations and you see what you can find out. It's just, this is stupid at this point. The fact that it's taken this long. Number 10, highlighting the importance of legislation to protect our armed forces against vexatious and repeated claims. Johnson wrote, the conclusion of the enactment of the Overseas Operational Bill is a crucial part of that, addressing veterans who have served overseas, but we are committed to doing more over the coming months, including for those who have served in Northern Ireland. Well, if you were going to do that, you would have done that by now. It's just so stupid. These guys are idiots. They act like, just because I didn't do it this time, I'll do it next time. Like, no, you won't. Like, you would have done it this time. Like, and people fall for this stuff. The law has come under fierce criticism by human rights groups, former military commanders, and lawyers for including a presumption against prosecution after the 5-year frame for the most serious of crimes, namely torture, genocide, and crimes against humanity. So, although the bill has been amended, and I think the government's accepted that, it does talk about that in the next paragraph. The fact that the government were going to protect people against claims of torture, genocide, and crimes against humanity does tell you a lot about this government. So Labour's Lord Roberts brought an amendment to the bill in the House of Lords to ensure that rule does not apply for those actions, which won the support of peers. That's good news. That's tremendous news. And now, ahead of the debate, the Military of Justice has conceded to the amendment, promising to exclude torture, genocide, and crimes against humanity from the rule. The Department of Defence confirmed it would seek to overturn the 3 amendments. It would seek to overturn 3 amendments agreed to peers earlier this month. So they are going to get rid of it, or they're not. It's very stupid what the government are doing here. And if they do get rid of those amendments, then what you're doing is protecting criminals. At that point, you are protecting criminals. And there were, multiple crimes here, from the 70s onwards. You got a mass shooting by the parachute regiment in the British Army. So, should these people not be punished if it's found that they've killed civilians, etc.? I don't know the specifics of this one, but it does sound like, this does sound like a potential war crime here. A bombing by Ulster Loyalists of the Ulster Volunteer Force, and you've got many more cases here from both sides. From the sort of the British Army, from the Unionists in Northern Ireland, and the Republicans within Northern Ireland as well, and the Republic of Ireland. So this is bizarre, to, these, like I said, some of these veterans would have been there from the 70s, so they'd be incredibly old right now. But the fact that it's taken this long is ridiculous. So this goes on to Johnny Mercer's broader statements about the government. So there's just a clip here. We're going to watch that quickly.
Can we get to the point of, were you sacked or did you resign? Because at different points yesterday, we heard that you were considering your position because this red line, as you put it, had been crossed. And then we heard that you'd been sacked. And then, of course, we have what is in effect a resignation letter, which makes it look like you've resigned. So what actually
Well, if you look on the date, it's actually dated for today. So what I tried to do was the courteous thing and tell number 10 that I was going to go at the end of play today. I thought that was the courteous thing to do. 3 hours later, it's in the newspapers. There's someone following me with a camera around London. And they asked me, they asked me to resign early. I said I wasn't going to be bullied into it. I left the room and I was sacked by text, pretty poor.
Who was bullying you? Was it the chief?
So again, it's very strange that, they try to push this guy into resigning, and they didn't want to sack him. I don't, is it a payout reason? Or I don't think ministers do get paid out if they're sacked. So it is very strange the government tried to do this. Maybe it's to avoid more drama around the situation. I mean, these guys don't make sense in the first place. So, a form of... do you know what? We'll talk about this Amnesty stuff first, actually. It'll make more sense. So, so this is about the investigations where the police service in Northern Ireland, looking at cases that require further investigation. It will also provide relatives with as much information and support as is possible. Because you've got to imagine, if your family member was killed by whoever, the Irish, the Republicans, the Unionists, or the British Army, you want closure. These people, these soldiers who are being investigated right now, and they're being defended by the government because they want these cases to be finished. They want closure for these veterans. But surely the families deserve the same, no? But the government has avoided controversy by rejecting the most contentious and explosive issue of all, amnesty. So the government hasn't given amnesty to certain people. One of the veterans seriously ill, 77-year-old former lifeguard Dennis Hutchinson, due to stand trial next year for the attempted murder in 74 of John Patrick Cunningham, a young man with learning difficulties, had no connection to the IRA. So this person here, surely if it is 1974, why is it taken so long to bring a case against this person? I genuinely don't understand. Why is it taken so long for any kind of, guilty or not guilty verdict? Mr. Hutchinson believes that amnesty is the only way to draw a line. Of course he would say that. Under the Troubles, and points out the IRA already had amnesty, which isn't actually fully true. More than 500 of its prisoners were released, and around 200 of its fugitives received the run letters from Tony Blair. I mean, again, you can see that this man still believes in the war mentality, in the spin mentality, because in fact the IRA prisoners release was not amnesty, as prisoners were only released on license, and the so-called letters of comfort made it clear that there would still be prosecutions should new evidence be found. So, clearly he's lying here, and he's desperate for this case to end. Which, if it is the case that he committed attempted murder on someone who had learning difficulties, had no connection to the IRA, then maybe this man should be punished. Maybe this man should be punished if he's found guilty of this crime, because how is it fair for this person, the victim of an attempted murder, and that family's victim to not have closure about what happened? How is that fair? Yeah, this is a double-edged sword. It's gonna hit someone, but don't commit war crimes, huh? The former this is about Johnny Mercer. So the former veterans minister has hit out at the government as the most distrustful, awful environment he's ever worked in. Which this man's been in the military. That sounds pretty rough. Tory MP Mercer told the Times Radio even, almost nobody tells the truth, and election pledges have not been delivered. So what Labour have to do is clip this up and play this at every chance they get, that a former minister has called the government a bunch of liars. That's what they have to do. And so when it comes to, any pledge the government make, is say, Johnny Mercer called you a liar. Your former minister called you a liar. He said, none of you tell the truth. What does that make you? A liar. Speaking to BBC Newsnight in an interview, which, is very quick that he got this interview, to be fair, so he must have been prepping for this one. Mercer said Boris Johnson failed to deliver on promises to protect ex-soldiers who served in Northern Ireland from prosecution. I mean, again, if these people had committed any sorts of war crimes or murders or whatever, would you not want them to be punished, Johnny Mercer? That's the question I'd ask, because this is a very softball interview. He told the programme he had been sacked by text, which is hilarious, after offering to resign at the end of Wednesday but refusing to go earlier. So it's very strange why he's drawn that kind of red line. I guess it was to say to the government, look, you have until Wednesday, otherwise I'm out. So on Tuesday, a number 10 spokesperson said the Prime Minister had accepted Mercer's resignation, but he said, he was sacked. So Lee Doherty, who replaced Mercer, said he promised legislation to offer protection to ex-soldiers who served during the Troubles. They've been excluded from the bill making its way through Parliament, which, if you were going to protect them, you would have done it by now, which aims to prevent unfounded prosecutions. But how do you define an unfounded prosecution? The Overseas Bill, which MPs, we mentioned that, the government has been promising the bill for a long time. This is Mercer speaking here, saying if he had thought there was any prospect of that bill coming, he would clearly have stayed, because the other stuff the government have done was not a red line for him. The Plymouth Moorview MP said he had asked officials before his departure whether a single word had been committed to paper. He was told no. So, clearly the government are lying. There's no two ways about this thing. Oh yeah, we're going to bring the legislation. It's happening. It's going to happen. And then it didn't happen. Speaking to Times Radio, he said nothing had been done over the issue of Northern Ireland veterans, despite previous Conservative commitments. Politics is a question of integrity. This whole trust thing, he added. This is the most distrustful, awful environment I have ever worked in. And Labour, if you haven't clipped this up already, hurry up. Almost nobody tells the truth, is what I've worked out over the last 36 hours. I don't think anyone can really get on their high horse about trust and ethics and all the rest of it in politics, because as far as I'm concerned, most of it is a bit of a cesspit. And, this will feed into, you got the whole Tory sleaze thing happening at the moment, and now you have this stuff. So, this is, Labour needs to start, really hitting the Tories now and saying that they don't care about, I wouldn't say they don't care about veterans, but what I would say is that a former minister said they can't be trusted. We are engaging with Northern Ireland parties. This is, who is this speaking? Prime Minister spokesman saying we are engaging with Northern Ireland parties and the community in Northern Ireland, including victims groups as well as the Irish government, on the way forward. So Johnny Mercer, obviously he wants protection for veterans, etc., against unfounded accusations. But again, if there is evidence of any sorts of crimes, yeah, surely they should be punished. And if there is evidence of any potential crimes, they should have been punished a long time ago. The fact that it's dragged on has made the situation worse for I think it was the 6 army people involved who are being investigated right now. But what can we learn from this video is that the Tory government, for whatever reason, has made some sort of distinction between veterans operating in Afghanistan and Iraq compared to those who operated during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. What else can we learn? Johnny Mercer called them a bunch of liars who cannot be trusted, and politics is a cesspit, which all of us already knew. And also the fact that Boris Johnson's a massive coward because he sacked, or somebody in the Conservative government is a massive coward because they didn't call for him, they didn't sack him to his face, they did it over text, which is just, the lowest scummy thing you can do. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Hopefully this video is okay. It's not too controversial because I know how people feel about it. The Troubles, etc. So hopefully this video is good enough. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.